David Starr from WatcherPass.com, your website for movie news, reviews, interviews, deals, and recommendations. Today we're joined by Frank Sabatella, the co-writer and director of the all-new horror film The Shed, which debuts exclusively on Shudder on August 27th. It's a new take on a vampire film. It has some really great young actors and some fantastic music. The film stars J.J. Warren, Cody Kostro, and Sofia Happonen. We're going to talk to Frank in a second, but first let's go check out that trailer.
People judge you here, not for who you are, but who you hang out with.
So you're gonna ask Roxy out again, or are you just gonna spank one out to her every day till graduation?
If it makes my life a little easier to hang out with one crowd over the other, I'm gonna do what I have to do till I'm out of here.
Remember one thing, though.
You're having my sloppy seconds. I'm telling you, man, one day they're gonna go too far and they're gonna be sorry.
There's something in the shed. It wants to kill me.
Are you kidding me?
Dahmer, I swear to God, there's something inside.
All right, then show me. Let me see your pet monster.
So thank you so much for joining me, Frank. This is your first, I think this is your first feature film, is that correct?
Second feature film.
Second feature film, oh, my bad. What was your first feature film?
First feature was a film called Blood Night, The Legend of Mary Hatchet.
Okay.
Came out in 2011.
Okay, great. So, I guess for people that maybe are interested in, how you kind of get your first break, how did you make that jump to kind of get that first feature film? I know that's a big step in Hollywood.
It was just consistency of knocking on doors, and then I think when you're prepared for the event, I think opportunity finds you, and that's kind of what happened with me. I had been working on some stuff, and a girl that I was dating at the time had just started working in this new technology company, and the CEOs of that company, by coincidence, were looking to produce a horror movie, and she set up a meeting with me and them, and we hit it off really well, and we ended up developing Blood Night and producing it, and I directed it.
That's awesome. That sounds like you're exactly the right place, right time, and just having that consistent work.
Pretty much what it was, yeah.
So I guess this is your sophomore effort. So, I guess what did you learn from that first effort that you put into this film? And I guess what did you learn from this film, that you didn't kind of expect,
I think what I learned the first time around was that, like, everything that I thought I knew from film school and working on short films and things like that was, like, irrelevant to making a feature film. Not irrelevant, but it's a whole different animal when you're working on a feature film. And I think from a director's standpoint, I think what I learned was there's a line between being too flexible with people because you don't want to be sort of authoritarian, but then also letting things slide that in your heart aren't the right thing to do. And I think I learned that with Blood Night, and then I brought that knowledge into The Shed, where I think I personally was more confident in myself and felt better about being consistent with my vision. And again, I had a great producer, Peter Block, who consistently brought very insightful notes, which was helpful. And I think when you're confident enough in yourself, I think it helps you take notes better, because rather than approaching notes from a defensive standpoint, I think it's our nature to defend your own vision or to defend your own ideas. But I think when you have more experience and more confidence in yourself, it enables you, in my opinion, to be more open to those notes and look at them subjectively and say, wait, is this going to help and benefit the vision, or is it not? And Peter was a great enough producer that he brought excellent notes, and I'd say we agreed 90% of the time. And in the 10% of the time where we disagreed, we were able to dialogue through it. And sometimes we'd go my way, sometimes we'd go his way. And sometimes we would just be like, wait a minute, here's a better way than we were both thinking. And something better would come out of it. Peter will say he's always right, but
Well, it sounds like a collaborative effort, so
many
maybe you're
times
both
he is, so
always
I'll
right.
give him that.
It sounds like a collaborative effort, so maybe you're both always right.
Yeah.
Um, and so, it's an interesting point that you said that, in your first feature film, you kind of learned that everything you learned in film school didn't apply. I think a lot of people, find that out after college when they go to their first job and they realize, okay, now I have all this great theory, but I don't know how to put it into practice. So it's good to hear you say that, because I'm sure a lot of people, in any field, not just film, will have that same thought.
I think with film school, and I think if you have the means to go to film school and you want to, go for it. And if you don't have the means, don't think that that doesn't mean you can't be a filmmaker. But for me, film school, the difference between film school and the real world was that you sort of are comforted in film school because all your equipment is available to you. You have people that want to work on films available to you. You're not working with like investors' money. And when things go wrong, there's not as much riding on it, and you're sort of learning these things. When it's a feature film, you don't have that. You don't have those comforts, I guess you could say, and you need to be able to adapt very quickly and deal with that pressure.
Very good advice. So you also wrote this film. So I guess what was the inspiration for this story? And it's such a kind of interesting take on the vampire mythos, like a small town type of vampire story.
Yeah, it started out as a short story that a film school buddy of mine wrote. It was like a 10-page short, and I loved the basic premise of a vampire locked in a shed by this like juvenile delinquent teenager. And I wanted to take that concept and sort of give it emotional depth. And what I started thinking about was, I always say this, the concept of neglect coming through, and how neglect manifests itself in the various forms of, like how these characters interact. So neglect can create abuse, neglect can create sadness, neglect can create anger. And for me, the idea started to become greater than a vampire in the shed. It started to become the vampire is a manifestation of all these dark emotions, and then how each character reacts to the dark emotions. And it just kind of started building from there. Once I connected to that emotional aspect, it seemed to take on greater meaning for me.
That is a really good point, and something I'm glad to talk to you about it, because it does feel kind of like almost like the Lord of the Rings type of thing, where everyone has a different reaction to it, and it's the reaction
Right.
kind of says a lot about your character and what's important to you.
Mhm.
So that was an interesting way to frame it.
Thanks.
I also noticed there was a lot of like I guess teenage and small town angst in this film. Is that I mean, I don't know. Did you grow up in a small town? Is that something that you
Yeah, I think I grew up in the suburbs. I lived in a few different towns in my life, and I think certainly in my adolescent and teen years, angst sort of, I think it's natural to your teenage years. But I've always just kind of been fascinated with that element of personality, that time period of life, and those types of characters. So I find myself exploring those identities in my characters, and certainly in this movie, because I think they're emotional aspects that I dealt with personally. And I think each one of these characters in the film is, one way or another, a reflection of myself through various stages of my life. And I think the non-horror movies that inspired me for this were movies like The River's Edge with Keanu Reeves, Over the Edge, those sort of like latchkey kids, because there's an element of neglect in those characters. And that just interests me, and it's what I wanted to explore.
yeah, and that element of neglect also kind of turns into an element of strength in the film. So that was a
Yeah.
nice way to kind of let that character grow. Also, on the same lines as the angst, uh, one thing I noticed is the music in this film is just fantastic. It's, I didn't know any of the bands, but I'm not very hip. So, was music always a focus? Was that something that you're
Yeah,
also passionate about?
music is huge for me, and unfortunately, my tastes in music are beyond what our music clearance budget is. So I wasn't able to get the actual music that we wanted for most of the movie. A few of the tracks we licensed, and then a few of the tracks we were working with a band called Luna, and they wrote music for us for the film, and I think it works really, really well, actually.
Yeah, especially some of the first sequences where, he puts on his headphones and you've got this like pumping guitar and like a
Yeah,
nice little bass
exactly.
riff
That was
going.
that band Luna. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool. I really liked that part. It kind of like started perked up. I'm like, oh, this sounds
Cool.
really nice.
Cool. Thanks.
And then, talking about your actors, I really liked J.J. Warren. I thought he did a fantastic job. I mean, all the main characters did a really good job, and were kind of really fun to see, interacting and kind of seeing how their different personalities meld. How did you go about finding them? Was it just a casting call, or did you have
Yeah.
anyone specifically in mind?
The typical channels. We hired a casting director named Lois Drabkin, and she was very cool. And she had done another film, I think a year or two before, called Super Dark Times. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Mm-mm.
If you're not, I highly recommend checking it out, because it's a similar vibe in terms of these sort of type of angsty kids, and when she came aboard for us, I was like, okay, this is going to be good, because I could tell she like gets it. I felt like she like understood it. And, we just went through the usual casting process, and JJ lived in LA at the time. I'm in New York, and we were casting out of New York. So JJ sent in a tape, which immediately me and the producers loved. And then Cody Kostro, who plays Dahmer, and Sofia Happonen, who plays Roxy, and Chris Petrovsky, who plays Marble, all auditioned in person in New York. And all of them were my first choices, except for
Awesome.
Chris Petrovsky, interestingly enough, auditioned for the role of Dahmer. And as soon as I saw him, I was like, that's Marble. I said, we have to cast him. And,
Dahmer's just this ripped guy.
yeah, it was funny. I was like, he's auditioning for the wrong part, but I liked him. I could tell he was good, and I was like, he's got the look and he's got the attitude. So we brought him back in to audition for Marble, and I was like, yeah, that's it. He's it.
Yeah, that was a good choice. That would look a little off if he was
Yeah,
Dahmer.
I was really pleased with the cast here. I mean, they really they killed it, and they were awesome to work with.
Yeah, they were a lot of fun to see. I always love seeing kind of some fresh faces and some new talent, and especially when they're on the screen, they killed it just really great. Kill it figuratively and literally. So, and I always ask this of everyone who kind of like writes and directs. Some of the. I'm curious, how close was the film to what you'd written? Did you kind of allow the actors to kind of go off and improvise? It seemed like maybe some of the conversation was fairly natural, so I wasn't sure if that was just your writing or if that was something that the actors brought.
I think it's a combination. I tend to have a natural dialogue writing style, and then I think what lends itself to that is when I'm working with the actors, I pretty much impart to them. I said, what I really need to come across is the essence of the conversation, not specifically word for word. And I think that allows them to naturalize a lot of the dialogue. I mean, I think if you went and read the script, you'd be like, yeah, this is the dialogue in the script. But, words change, sentences change, deliveries change, and that I hand to the actors. If they go off too far and I'm like, no, we got to bring it back, I will. But I like to allow the actors to bring the wording into their comfort zone. And I think it comes more naturally, and it starts to feel real, which is what we want.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Is that something that you have always done, or is that something that you learned from your previous efforts that you then brought to this feature film?
I think I was doing the same thing with Blood Night, but I think that Blood Night is like a straight like late night cable slasher film. Like I wanted it to be like one of those like body count slasher movies. So the dialogue in that movie didn't have as much gravity as it does in The Shed, but I pretty much employed the same techniques. I think even if you watch Blood Night, even though it's a let's call it a stupid slasher, so to speak, even though I love slasher movies, the dialogue doesn't feel scripty, in my opinion. So I think it's just something I do and how I like to let conversation come across on screen.
I think you made the right choice here.
Thank you.
I also kind of loved that it seemed like there wasn't much CG. I mean, CG is kind of one of my pet peeves in movies. If it's not done right, it can really kind of pull me out. And I feel like in horror, there's a lot of like good makeup effects, and people kind of have a preference for using makeup. Is that something that you've, it seems like it's your style, but
I 100% prefer practical effects as much as possible, makeup effects. However, especially on a lower budget film like this, often you have to supplement or correct with the CGI stuff. So there is some CGI in the shed. Hopefully you don't notice it. But there are certain effects that just, based on the nature of our budget and our time constraints, had to be done digitally. But hopefully they're hidden enough. And the way I like to approach digital effects is, rather than making it a straight computer-generated image, we tend to film something physically happening, but then overlay it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So rather than having like fake blood, rather than it being animated blood, it's real blood splatter that's being filmed, but not happening in scene. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, gotcha.
So it's sort of a combination. I would love to get myself to the point where I have a budget and I have the time to 100% do practical effects. I think it looks better. I think people enjoy it more, and it's more fun.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. We'll see what the next one brings. So now we'll move on to, I call it the lightning round, but it's just a bunch of random questions. Some have a basis in the movie, some have a basis in the characters. And it's very lightweight. You can choose to answer as much or as little as you want. I try to keep them to be questions that are answerable. So but if you don't want to answer one,
last round of Family Feud.
Yeah, exactly. So the first one is, have you ever had blood sausage?
I have, yes, in Manchester.
Oh, it's a good place to have it.
Yeah.
Have you ever had blood pudding?
No, I have not.
Okay. So this film has, as we talked about, some angst involved. In high school, were you an outcast or were you popular? Somewhere in between.
I was a popular outcast. Does that make sense?
That's a good place to be.
I was an outcast that like everybody knew. I wasn't popular, but everybody knew who I was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does. Did you have a friend that was similar to Dahmer, like another kind of similar outcast who,
yeah,
relied on?
I did. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have a shed?
Do I have a what?
A shed.
I do not.
Oh, okay. Then I guess I guess I can't ask what's in it.
Nothing.
What is the worst thing you found in a shed or an abandoned building?
The worst thing I found in a shed or an abandoned building. I found in the abandoned insane asylum that we filmed Blood Night in, I found dental teeth molds, like fake teeth, from inmates that were in the asylum.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I guess, did you keep them? Are you allowed to keep them?
I kept them. It was an abandoned building, so I just did whatever I wanted.
That makes sense. So this movie has a couple dream sequences, and one of them is inspired by a poster that the character has in his room. So have you ever had a dream inspired by a horror movie or a horror poster, either scary or other types of dreams?
Yeah, I actually, this is gonna sound silly, but I have a recurring Jason Voorhees nightmare actually, and it's so random and weird, but like, it's not always the exact same dream, but somehow Jason shows up and I'm being chased by Jason.
All right.
It's frightening in the moment.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I wonder what that means, but I'm not even qualified to try to analyze that. So.
I'm a huge Friday the 13th fan, so I think that's why Jason shows up. What the actual psychological implication of what that represents is, I'm not sure.
And how would you arm yourself against a vampire?
A cross and wooden stakes.
It's a good choice.
Yeah.
So part of this movie, has them locking down their house for some sort of threat. Have you ever had to kind of lock down a house or a room, either for some sort of real or imagined threat? Maybe Jason Voorhees was coming after you.
I never actually have had to do that, but we've been in lockdown since March, so.
There you go. I guess we're all.
I didn't really board up the windows, though.
Yeah, I guess we're all locked out of that.
Yeah.
And I guess, do you have a dog?
I do not have a dog.
Okay. All right. Well, so that gets through most of the main questions. Warning for everyone, I'm going to move into spoilers. There aren't going to be that many questions, so you've seen kind of the bulk of the interview. I guess before I move into that, let's ask, so that people can just log off if they don't want to see, the Shed's coming out next Friday on August 27th.
Thursday.
Thursday, next Thursday on August 27th. So, now that that's out of the way, what's next for you? Do you have another project lined up? Are you going to kind of do the PR and rest?
Yeah, I'm gonna chill out a little bit after this little publicity round, but I'm working on 2 features that I'm developing, and a series of other like little projects that are in various stages of development. The industry is kind of at a standstill at the moment, so I don't really know. It kind of feels like you're spinning your wheels a little bit, but I'm just compelled to keep doing stuff for when things, I guess, reemerge.
No, now is the right time to do it, right? You got the time to think and write and develop. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I'm glad you're staying busy. I know that, as you said, the industry is kind of spinning down, although maybe it'll start picking up now that things are looking like they're going to open up.
I
So
see little things happening here and there, and some of the bigger productions are happening. So I guess they're more able to control things. So we'll see how it goes.
fingers crossed. I'm excited to see what comes next. I hope it has the same level of music, because that was something that really hit me, is that music was
Music is
awesome.
really important to me. So, and I think music is a great way for a director to kind of put his signature on a film. So
Yeah, 100% agree. All right, so now for everyone that hasn't seen the film, we're going to move into some spoilers, some heavy spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's on Shudder, or should be on Shudder shortly. And after that, come back and listen to these questions. So first question is, I'm sure there are a ton of horror references in the film. The one that I might have noticed is the dog seemed like maybe an homage to I Am Legend. Was that something, or was that just me? What?
I've never seen I Am Legend. So no.
I had this whole vision in my head of you. That also kind of deals with like a vampire-esque threat, and there's a German Shepherd in there. Well, I guess So, if you don't mind, like, what were there any horror references in there that I clearly missed, but maybe someone that is a bigger fan would find?
There's like a quick line from Sleepaway Camp in there when Stan and Marble first have their like first confrontation in the high school, and Marble says to Stan, "Eat shit and die," and then Stan replies, "Eat shit and live."
Mm-hmm.
That's a line from Sleepaway Camp that I threw in there. It's one of my favorite slashers.
Oh, nice.
Trying to think if there's other like direct nods. There's a lot of like elemental nods, so to speak. Like I felt the dream sequences, some of them have like a bit of an Elm Street vibe that I was trying to sort of impart.
Mm-hmm.
In his fever dream, when he's first walking out of the house and he's walking towards the shed, that kind of was like an E.T. sort of inspired moment for me. Things like that. I just wanted to sort of incorporate the atmospheres of, Near Dark was an atmospheric influence, things like that. The end, I wanted to feel more like a slasher movie. By the end of the third act, I wanted to just be like, all right, let's be a horror movie for real,
Yeah, no, that was interesting, because it did feel like there was a lot of build up in like the characters and the setting before kind of the quote unquote true horror part kicked in. So I like that. It was kind of like part teenage coming of age, part Home Alone, all slasher. So
yeah, somebody one of the reviews, I don't remember who, I forgot who, but they said it was a cross between a River's Edge and Fright Night, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I was like, that's like a really awesome compliment to me, because it's like they understood some of my references.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a really good take. So I guess this next question is another about a dog also. I feel like it's kind of a cardinal sin in movies to kill a dog, but you did so in a very gruesome early manner. Is that always
a lot of people were really bothered by that, and I didn't think people would be that bothered by it. But I feel like as a shocking moment to imply evil, I think it's better to. People are more shocked and upset when you kill an animal than when you kill a person on screen. Yep. So I think I was just trying to serve that effect, and also give us a moment to care about Grandpa, the character, because he's pretty much a bastard. But in that moment, I think you kind of feel for him a little bit when he, when he sees his dog is dead. I hope,
Yeah, no, that is kind of one of the first humanizing moments for him. So I
Like the
take your
only
point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then last question. So it seems like the end implies that maybe Dahmer might be alive. I would, is there some sort of plan for a sequel with him, or was that just kind of the way to?
It was just I think it's cool to leave horror movies open ended. They always feel, ooh, maybe there's more. I will give you a round of applause because most people are like, who the hell's in the trunk? And to me, it's very obvious that it would be Dahmer.
Yeah.
So good job on on understanding that. But
Thank you.
I'm not personally writing another sequel right now. But if I'm not closed off to it. If the audience wants one, and if the situation arose where people are like, hey, we want another Shed, there's more to do with this story, I would.
Yeah, no, I could see something. It seems like in the end they kind of have embraced their roles as vampire hunters, and maybe Dahmer can be kind of the
I could see it
Alucard
like
character.
almost like a road trip movie or something. Like they're on the run and they're trying to keep Dahmer alive and stuff like that.
And that would be a fantastic way to highlight a bunch of music. So there you go.
Exactly.
Well, awesome. Yeah, I kind of thought, maybe it would be like a Shaun of the Dead type of situation where, at the end they've got his friends still alive. So, well, alive, quote unquote.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and for joining me. This has been a great chat.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. I know that you all are busy trying to promote this, so I'm happy to spend some time talking about it.
Awesome.
So thank you everyone for listening. This has been Frank Sabatella. He's the co-writer and director of The Shed. It opens exclusively on Shudder on August 27th. That's next Thursday. And, you should check it out. Check out the review. The review will publish sometime next week, and this interview will as well. And as always, please go to watcherpass.com for all your movie news, reviews, interviews, deals, and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you liked this interview, please feel free to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. It helps me out a lot. It helps make sure that the videos go directly to you and you get notifications. And as always, please go to watcherpass.com for all your movie news, reviews, interviews, deals, and recommendations. Thank you.